So this is going to be a spoiler-free review of Thor: Love and Thunder, the fourth solo Thor adventure slash film that we've gotten. The film finds Thor, years after we last saw him in the Endgame, on a new quest slash adventure, battling a new foe named Gorr the God Butcher, whose mission is to kill all the gods in the universe. And then there's a new dynamic of his ex-girlfriend Jane Foster, who we last really saw in Thor: The Dark World, obtaining the power of Thor by wielding a restored version of Mjolnir, Thor's old hammer. Now, excitement for the character Thor and Thor adventures and Thor films took a new turn following Thor Ragnarok. And I mean, how could it not? I mean, those first two Thor films were among the worst of the MCU, with me actually thinking that the first Thor film is my least favorite MCU film. And then Thor's character was pretty boring in those films also, and Chris Hemsworth has even admitted as much. And then director Taika Waititi took the helm and gave us Ragnarok, an excellent, fun MCU adventure and a top 5 film MCU film overall. Waititi brings that similar type of energy, style, humor, and direction to this film that made Ragnarok so successful. And I'm not talking about a similar story type. Thankfully, the story is very different. I'm talking about the type of dialogue, humor, action style, and use of music. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to the direction style used in the Guardians of the Galaxy films. Speaking of those films slash group, those characters have a pretty minor appearance in this film, and then they're out. It makes sense, since this is a Thor film, not a Guardians of the Galaxy film, although I will admit that I did wish they were in the film a little bit more, because I did quite enjoy those scenes of a ravaging Thor and him with the other Guardians, and that doesn't last very long here. I really think it was only included here to really sort of bridge the story gap to where Thor was at the end of Endgame, and the story that he sets off around here, this new adventure. Jane Foster's return here was great, and probably the best singular element this film had going for it. Her character is at a very meaningful stage in her life, and that doesn't go away just when her power gets so powered up and she becomes the Mighty Jane, or Mighty Thor, whatever you want to call her. But now how she was able to really master those Thor powers so quickly was kind of weird, but it definitely was cool to see her character in this new kind of way. Valkyrie and Korg, well, they are what you expect for them. Both of them have their similar sort of character styles or whatever. Valkyrie doing her Valkyrie stuff where she's now the king of New Asgard, and Korg provides mostly some of the best laughs in the film. Both of these characters have revelations about their characters that are sure to be talked about afterwards. Then there's Thor himself, and Thor is Thor. And thankfully that means he's the same lovable, heroic doofus that we've gotten since Ragnarok. He's got all those quirks to him now, while still them finding, the ways to humanize his character, mainly his flaws, like his insecurity and his jealousy. Looking back at the character pre-Ragnarok is pretty stunning now, just because, like I said, his character was pretty boring pre that film, and now he's become such a lovable, fun character to follow. To where, who would have thought, like years ago, maybe when Avengers Endgame came out, that Thor would have the longest lasting MCU legacy in terms of how long the character would be around, the films, and all that kind of stuff. But lo and behold, shows what a good direction and a good writing can do. Without spoiling things directly, the end of the film puts Thor in a very sort of interesting spot slash role that I never thought we would see him in any of these films. The element I was probably the most intrigued about going into this film was Christian Bale's Gorr the God Butcher. This is because Christian Bale is that caliber of actor and that kind of particular about his projects that he won't just join no kind of blockbuster role all willy-nilly without looking at that script. Obviously, he was Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy, but that trilogy wasn't your typical run-of-the-mill comic book flip. That made me raise my eyebrow to the type of character that we'd see in this film. There was even pre-film talk about him being the best MCU villain that we've gotten so far. Well, that didn't end up being true, and the best way to sum it up, Bale was great. The character overall, he was okay. His opening scene that we see him in created a whole lot of intrigue towards like, ooh, maybe this will be that sort of a next caliber or sort of great, like top 3 MCU villain right here. But from that point on, the character, he was a solid villain, at times even a pretty good one. But I don't know about great. In fact, I would definitely say not great. There wasn't that kind of next level writing that I thought we'd see. And actually that sort of next level, deeper kind of writing, we don't really see from the character until sort of the very end of the film. For this reason, I thought the overall story in the film was just okay. You know, there's fun stops, like the journey to the realm of gods where they meet Zeus and there's some fun stuff there. And then there are the scenes on New Asgard. But I never quite had that real feeling of real story engagement that I wanted, or more importantly, a real sense of urgency that I probably should have had while watching this film, and if Gore was the caliber of villain and made the kind of impact that I think he should have had in this film. The film was really carried by Waititi's direction, good and fun performances from the cast, and Jane Foster's story, which I did think was great. And for those interested, the film has plenty of Disney being Disney. And these days, that means something different than when I was a kid. I'll leave it at that. 7 out of 10 for Thor Love and Thunder. The film didn't need to be as great as Thor Ragnarok to be a fun Thor adventure, and it certainly was not as good as Thor Ragnarok, but I still had enough fun with this film. As I mentioned before, the film leaves Thor in a position to where I would be very curious and interested in his next adventure and what kind of character he'll be by then. And also sort of building off of that, there are some great setups for whatever the next sequel is going to be about in the 2 after credit sequences after. So definitely stay for those. So that'll do it for this review of Thor Love and Thunder. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.